Hey, welcome back to Pandalytics. Thanks for joining us again. And today we're going to talk about medical imaging. In the past, my videos have been focused on an end-to-end multimodal analytics platform on Microsoft Fabric. And we told you in the last video that medical imaging is there. We have this wonderful viewer, but we didn't really talk about the application. And in radiology, typically the technology is not really the bottleneck. It's the context. It's where are those images? Are they locked behind a PACS system? Or are they locked behind a vendor-neutral archive, a VNA? And if they are, do I have to use a proprietary protocol that's vendor-specific? And if I can use the kind of generalized protocol DICOM or DICOMweb, can I use it in a robust manner to find patients that have similar images together? And that's what we're going to talk about today. A problem we frequently have in looking at medical images is getting all of them together coalesced in one spot, answering questions, and combining those patients with patient information from a disparate system, the non-imaging side, and then also getting those patients collected together so we can find inferences and nuances that we may have missed when looking at individual patient by patient as a radiologist. So maybe as a data scientist or a radiologist analyst, I can go back and try to find cohorts of patients that share similar images, that have similar symptoms, and maybe find some correlations that weren't there in the past. So today, instead of looking at the entire Fabric ecosystem that we've talked about in past videos, we're going to be focusing straight in on that one use case, finding medical images, finding patients that share similar problems, and correlating those images together. Let's take a look on this episode of Pandalytics. Okay, so remember in past videos where we talked about getting your UI set up and going through all the phases of this very elaborate multimodal, holistic end-to-end real-time DICOM ontologies demo. We're not going to talk about all those things today. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, we are going to focus on medical images. So all we're going to do today, right now, is build the front end enough to where we can deploy that medical image device platform. And then we're going to jump into the platform and explore it, see what we can do, go through the analysis, and show exactly why, as a radiologist or as an analyst that works in radiology, why the solution makes a lot of sense and should be used when you're looking to do massive scale analytics on petabytes of medical images. So let's dive in. First things first, if you notice here, I have my terminal here. I have cloned my medical device emulator repo. So I'm going to just go over to that. And now that I'm inside that directory, start up the UI. Once I have the UI stood up, I can then deploy specifically the medical imaging device apparatus, kind of the harness, so that we can get into Fabric and Azure as quickly as possible. So now that I'm in my medical device emulator repo, I need to initiate the UI. So I have that as a PowerShell command, and because I'm in a Mac OS, I can't just /invoke it. So I'm going to use the PowerShell PWSH file switch, and then the actual script. So here we are, web UI, there we are. And I always pass force because I built that in to kill any processes that may have already been running with the same port numbers so that we don't have any conflicts. This makes it a little easier. So I'm going to click enter. And it's going to start up very quickly. If you see here, there is this local host. If I hold down Control or Command, I can click on this link. So I'm going to click on that now. And here I am. A couple things up front. First off, the pre-flight checks automatically happen. You don't have to do anything about it. But if you do have something that the scripts need, this tab will let you know what you need to do to install it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here That's another video, but I do want to mention that if you have any problems, click this here before you go into troubleshooting in FAQ mode. So we're going to go over to deploy, and we're not going to deploy the entire works here. We're just going to focus on medical images. The first thing we need to do is give it a name. I'm going to call this A, something a little different than what I've done in the past. You select which subscription you'd like, and then which fabric capacity you'd like. If it's not started, there will be a button here that says resume the fabric capacity. You'll select your location. I have East US. For me, I use resource tags. I'm required to. And then here is where we can get very selective about what we will deploy. Because we're not targeting real-time intelligence, RTI, we will unclick that. We will unclick RTI here as well. And if you notice, you can hover your mouse over these things and understand what each one of these steps will do. We are going to keep data agents on, but we're going to deselect SDOH and quality dashboards and things like that for ECQMs. It's not in scope for this video. So I don't need an alert email. Why? Because that's for real-time intelligence, for alerting and activations and things like that. We're not focused on that. We just care about the after-the-fact analysis that will happen after we click Go. So now I'll just scroll down here to the bottom and click Start Deploy. And you'll notice on the left and right, it'll show you what's deployed in Azure and what is deployed in Fabric. And inside the documentation of the repo, you will notice that you will need certain permissions to deploy. Usually if you have contributor access on Azure side to an entire resource group, and then if you are a Fabric administrator, or you have the ability to create a workspace and have a capacity assigned to you, which are checked on the pre-flights. But I can scroll down and see what all is involved here, or I can click on this handy dandy little graph. There's a couple of the new things here that show you all the interdependencies of what's being deployed, starting with synthetic patients, so not real patients, and those TCIA images I talked about earlier that come from the Cancer Image Archive, TCIA, and we're going to marry up those synthetic patients with those images through this process that will result in some Power BI reporting, dashboards, and data agents here. Pretty cool, huh? So we'll click Go. And as soon as I click Go, it flips me over to a deployment monitor. And the deployment monitor will give you a nice little Gantt chart that'll show you how much time is left, about what's been done, what's not been done. And unfortunately, the APIs for HDS, which is the Fabric overlay that is required for all this stuff to work, still requires a manual step. So as soon as I see that workspace right here, creating workspace, and see that it is created, I'm going to flip over to Fabric, refresh my screen, and do that one manual step. Once we're done with that one manual step, we'll grab a coffee, get some lunch, whatever, come back in about an hour, and all this stuff will be deployed for us. All right, so let's flip over to Fabric. And we'll refresh our page here. And if I go to my workspaces, here I go, right here. This is the one that was just created by the UI that we were just looking at. Let's do our one manual step, which is creating Healthcare Data Solutions Fabric item and going through the setup. If it's not here at the top like it is for me, it's all the way down here at the bottom, Healthcare Data Solutions, right here. And we'll click Set Up Your Solution. We'll click Next twice. We'll click on DICOM Data Transformations. Click Next, Next. Click this nice little I acknowledge box here and read the terms of service if you're so inclined, and click Deploy. That is it. We can go back to our Monitor tab, see what's been done already. We're starting to deploy our synthetic patients and a FHIR service. The FHIR service emulates Epic or an EHR of your choice. And that's the process we're on right now. So I'm going to pause the video real fast. Okay, Now the deployment is done. We can take a look and see how it deployed, what was deployed inside our Fabric and Azure workspaces. So here on this screen we have a nice little summary of what was deployed here. I can click on Summarize Deploy, hover my mouse over here, show how long each one of these things took. I do want to point out here that this summary just talks about infrastructure and not about the actual processes of ingesting on the Fabric side. That still takes about 30 to 45 minutes depending on how many patients you simulated, and also the fact that it has to pull apart all those images from the TCIA and then understand what's inside of them and then put them into a database. You can come down here as well and you can take a look and see what exactly each one of these phases, how long they took, what was done inside them, the logs and whatnot. And then there's this handy dandy deployment artifacts and security. So it goes out to Azure and Fabric to kind of pull what in the real world in the cloud, what was actually done for deployment. So it shows you the type of deployment it was, and then what it is, and how it was secured, and if it used a service principal or if it didn't, all sorts of fun stuff. And you can export this to Excel or CSV if you'd like, and have kind of a document of exactly what was deployed. This is very helpful if you're looking to quickly track what was deployed as you do multiple demos and things like that. And then let's kind of zoom out a little bit and come back here to our diagram of what was deployed. And if we notice here, this side of the house simulates coming from the PACS system or the VNA system, the medical imaging system. And as we throw these things out into a storage account, it's absorbed into the medical system's EHR, which we're kind of simulating with a FHIR server. And then that's exported out again to a bronze lakehouse, and it goes through the Fabric processes of pulling out both the clinical side and the imaging side into one cohesive spot. And next, we're going to go through exactly these processes here of harmonizing the data and getting it into one spot so that you can get a nice holistic view of all your medical imaging data alongside the clinical data that's simulated from the EHR with a agent or Power BI dashboard, or one quick thing that this deploys is a viewer to help you see those particular images to understand, oh yeah, those are patients with x-rays or MRIs or whatever. So the next part, we will go through Fabric and look at all the stuff that was deployed as part of the entire DICOM imaging footprint. Okay, we're here in Fabric with the now deployed solution, and we'll be looking at this project and what it deployed to help us identify which analytical processes might make the most sense based on your need. We'll first start with the data agent. And the data agent is a really interesting thing that's inside of Fabric, and then when we couple it with the use case of trying to explore and find new patient demographics or cohorts that have medical images, because in the past it's kind of hard to find out which patients have images and which patients have information that are in the EHR, and they're not necessarily linked to each other. But because we did the work of deploying the solution, and the solution emulates having data from your PACS and VNA systems, your medical images, along with your patient data from your EHR, like Cerner or Epic or eClinicalWorks or whatever, and then it puts them all in the same co-located location, the agent can now see all locations together and answer questions and help you cohort and build out some use cases if you're trying to do research. So let's look at this real fast. If I go into my agents here and I click on this multi-layer cohorting agent, you'll see some different queries I've already given in the past. We're just going to start over from scratch and kind of explore this together. So let's say I'm a researcher and I'm trying to find out which patients are in my entire data estate that have medical images. So let's just ask that question. Which patients have medical imaging inside of our data estate? And I'm going to click enter here. And I'm using this cool little tool called Whisper that allows me to dictate rather than type out things. Makes things a little bit faster. So right now you're seeing the data agent go over the data repositories that have been populated by the orchestrator UI that we used earlier. And now it's seeing that the images that it grabbed from the TCIA and the synthetic patients from Synthea that are created are now imported and parsed correctly. It's now returning results to say, hey, these people have images. Pretty cool, right? Let's go a little bit deeper. What are the medical imaging modalities on these patients? And can you organize them by demographics, like by age? So now we're getting a little bit more into it. Great, I found patients that have imaging. Wonderful. What if I'm looking for a specific type, like CTs or X-rays? What if I'm looking in a certain age band? Because maybe my project today is to find out if there are folks that have imaging that are underrepresented. So, okay, these folks are organized by birthday. It's not exactly what I was thinking about. So let's do this. Can you summarize each modality and the age groups inside each modality? So now we're going to get a little bit more specific to say, okay, for the modality, which age ranges have the most information, right? So now we're getting very, very specific, and then I can target my research a little bit better and easier. So we're going to go through and see what it gives us back. It takes about 10, 15 seconds every time we query it here. And then if I look here, I can see that folks born in 2000s have the most, and the 1970s have the most CTs. For X-rays, only 2 unique patients there, so that's underrepresented. If I'm a researcher, maybe I would go in and take a look and see why that is, right? This is great. This allows me to identify folks based on maybe a condition or which type of images they've had done. That's wonderful. But what if I want to see like a giant overview or report? Well, as part and parcel of that deployment we did earlier, we can see with a report which demographics are there and where those images are located. So I can see the same thing that my agent was returning as well. I can say, okay, well, I have CTs or X-rays or whatever that I can filter on and all that fun stuff. This is great. This is kind of an interactive version of that natural language stuff we did in the agent. But one other thing, what if I want to analyze a specific image, right? So let me just pick an image here. And now, if you notice, it popped out another tab. So I'm leaving Fabric and going into Azure, and as part of that project, another really cool thing is that we can now view those images, those medical images, inside an OHIF viewer that allows us to see exactly what a radiologist would have seen as they were reading the image. And if I were doing cohorting and saying, give me a grouping of patients with this particular type of modality, and trying to figure out if folks with the same condition, with the same MRI type, have the same type of lesion or the same type of other thing represented inside the film or inside the slice, this is really, really cool because now I can identify really interesting aspects about the group of patients instead of just a singular patient. So I'm now in this viewer and I've just clicked on it from Fabric, from our analytics platform that's meant to help us organize patients and financial data and supply chain data and all these other things together in the one spot. I can now look in it and see some clinically interesting types of information. I can go through the CT and find out what exactly is going on in each slice. Kind of cool, huh? So close that. And now I can come in and see where those images are. If I want to look at a specific slice that seems like the problem child or whatever, I can look up by patient, whatever studies they have in the system. And I can always go back to the agent and find out more information about said patient. What if I am a data engineer and I want to see where the data is sitting? Well, Joey's telling me I have all these end user things, agents and image viewers and Power BI reports. But what if I want to look at the data itself? So I want to come back into the Fabric workspace and take a look at the data itself. So I'm going to go in here into the Silver Lakehouse here, and I can see from this one table inside of Fabric, imaging study here, a bunch of these things here. And if you notice, I'm getting them from two sources. I may have had some more information about where it's coming from. Here I'm actually putting in some metadata about where the data is coming from. I got some more information about the source system and what it sent me. This is all wonderful and great for me to look at and see. And this error up here just tells me that as I was importing data, I needed to cast type something, but it's not actually an actual error. So if you have any questions, whether you are an analyst looking to simply type questions in the agent, or maybe you're a radiologist director for an organization, you want to see an overview of all images everywhere, or you're maybe a radiologist or clinically trained and you want to see the image themselves, you can go in and click these things and they are all available in one single spot inside of Fabric. That's the whole reason why I made this video, is to make sure you know that as a Fabric user using this solution, you could build out a pipeline to pull in your images from Fabric, or to Fabric, excuse me, and pull in your clinical data from your EHR, and you can commingle them together and marry them up to provide a centralized spot for management, analysis, AI review, and a whole bunch more. I want to thank you for taking the time to explore this project with me, and if you have questions, feel free to give me a comment, and of course, please like and subscribe. It wouldn't be a YouTube video if I didn't ask that. And give me some ideas on what you would like to see on the next video. Cheers, take care, bye-bye.